everybody, welcome back to my platform. If you're new to this platform, All Things African Parenting, my name is Chiedza Nyamfukuza. I'm a social worker and I'm also working on my parenting coach certification. I created this platform as I had a passion to empower parents of African descent so that they're able to raise emotionally healthy children. The purpose of today is to discuss and talk about discipline. It will be in a 3-part series, so today is just an introductory video. The second video will look at the purpose of discipline, what it is and what it's not. And then in my third video, I'm going to discuss alternatives to yelling, spanking, shouting, and it's also research-based methods that are proven to work. Within our African community, I've observed that there is a growing misconception regarding social services, and there is this misconception that if you discipline children, if you give boundaries to children, if you give them structure, if you teach them right from wrong, you're likely to have your children removed. And it is a growing misconception because actually if children are not given the appropriate boundaries, if they're not given the appropriate guidance, and this results in significant harm, actually the latter is actually true. I think there is a balance that is between giving children guidance and boundaries and also using the appropriate methods that don't harm the children. So I know that significant harm can actually be a result of a parent not implementing the appropriate boundaries, and also significant harm can actually be a result of the parent overdoing or putting boundaries in a very harsh way that affects the children. In my own opinion, based on a lot of the psychology books I've read, based on a lot of the material I've read on disciplining, I do not support hitting, spanking, yelling, and shouting. The reason I don't support those methods of parenting because they are violent methods and fear-based methods of parenting. And I know what the law says in this country. It says, I know there are many people who quote and say, oh, if you've not left a mark on the child. But emotional harm can also be inflicted on the child even though a mark is not left on the child. And also emotional harm is not physically evident. So I'm actually against yelling, shouting, spanking because in my opinion they are violent methods of parenting. Take for example, why do we not support a husband hitting their wife, or a wife hitting their husband, or partners hitting each other, and yet when we are raising our children we are modeling that it is acceptable to use violence to manage certain behaviors? I think we are programming people to be violent, and then when they are used to this habit we then tell them these habits are not acceptable. It's almost as impossible. So I think from a young age children should be programmed to use methods that aren't violent, methods that show empathy. I think that's an easier way, a preventative measure, other than waiting until somebody is a perpetrator of domestic abuse, physical violence, and then we want to try and intervene. For parents of African descent, not all, but a lot of them, this can really feel disempowering to know that all you've ever known when you discipline your child is considered a violent method of parenting. You're probably used to raising your voice, you're probably used to yelling and shouting to get a response that you want, and you're probably used to hitting. I know this can be disempowering, but if you stay with me, I will in my third video offer alternatives that actually work and that respectful, that model respect, that work with children without necessarily causing harm. I think a principle that I would want to draw from is a while ago I read The 7 Habits of Effective People, written by Stephen Covey. And Stephen Covey he talks about the principle of the emotional bank account. And Stephen talks about every behavior being either a deposit or a withdrawal in the emotional bank account. So he gives examples such as when you give praise, when you show empathy, when you show acts of kindness. All those are deposits within the emotional bank account. And then he talks about withdrawals, which are things like criticizing, things like shouting, things like ignoring. If you actually apply this principle, it will be an easier way for you to understand why it's important to balance emotional warmth with guidance and boundaries. I myself, when I'm applying this principle, I always try to make sure that when I'm disciplining my child, it's built on connection. So I don't want my child to associate me with just being the disciplinarian, me just being the person who gives rules, and there is this power struggle between us. I try to ensure that there is a good balance between me restraining my child and ensuring that there are a lot of deposits within the emotional bank account. I'm giving them validation, I'm giving them praise, I'm showing them love, I'm showing them emotional warmth, I'm hugging them, so that they don't only just associate my input within the parenting as someone who is there to control and manage their behavior. I think there has to be a good balance. I'm actually against the whole principle of disciplinarian, because when a child sees you as a disciplinarian, they see you as the person who's controlling, the person who's always criticizing, the person who is always correcting them. And that does not ignite warm feelings. The child is always associating you with negative feelings, and that erodes a good parent and child relationship. So I think that there should be a good balance of you depositing within the emotional bank account, where you're showing acts of kindness, you're showing them validation, you're showing them empathy, and then when you then correct them, they know that it's coming from a place of love and connection. I will give an example of a manager who always points out the wrong things you do. When you do the good stuff, when you do really well, they never highlight that. It's just the same as how a child would feel. If you're constantly getting criticism without any praise, it derails you. For a lot of people, this can actually be a reason for them to resign and leave work. I think there has to be a good balance between criticism, between acts that are correcting behavior, and also acts that praise and show validation to the child. I'll also give an example of a partner who is always criticizing, or a friend who's always pointing out your flaws. I am right to say that you probably wouldn't want to hang out or spend a lot of time with a friend who's like that, because they make you feel emotionally unsafe. And that is the same with our children. When we are constantly criticizing them, when we are constantly correcting them, when we are constantly disciplining them without showing them love and empathy, without any connection, it can ignite feelings of feeling emotionally unsafe. I always go by the principle of there has to be connection before correction. Connection before correction. Thank you for watching my video. Meet you in my second part of the series, and I hope you've enjoyed this video.